Welcome to Double Dose of Raw Talk Podcast, your weekly dose of many discussions and opinions, a show where we get comfortable being uncomfortable. And remember, no topic is off limits. Now let's talk about it. Something
Yeah.
about just feels refreshing. I don't know what it is, but it just
Yeah.
happens.
I used to have my desk on the other side and
Yeah.
then it didn't feel good. So I brought it on this side.
Right? Right? I want to change my room around, but I'm a little bit concerned of what's going to happen with this right here. I am actually I'm going to throw myself off completely. So I don't know. But all right, let's get started. So, welcome back, guys, to another week and another episode on Double Dose of Raw Talk podcast. I'm your host, Misty, and today, almost an entire year later of having met my guest in person, okay, and I talked about this event a year ago, October 2021. If I remember, it was October 15th, I believe it was. Um, and it was for the Dream Lab. And I mentioned what that moment was for me. I mentioned it. And I spoke on it a little bit on this episode. I still have the mirror you gave us as a
Wow.
gift. And it's funny because we're gonna highlight that on this episode. We are. It's so important to highlight this mirror, and what it's meant for me and what it's done for me. And I'm gonna try really hard to not get emotional and not cry. Um, but this is gonna be raw talk here. I've kind of given hints to my guests, my listeners, I should say, but it's time to come through with keeping it raw, like I say here, right?
Amen. Yeah.
And so a year ago, I was at a workplace environment. I recently switched out and I shared on this platform just how horrific that year in that place was for me.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, it was a great step up, which led to today's step up, right? But everything else was horrible. And when I first started that workplace environment, I had a little mini sode here where I said the grass is not always greener. And this was maybe a month after or 2 months after, right? And then come October, I go to the Dream Lab. And at the Dream Lab, meeting amazing, amazing women. Just Jesus Christ. Let me tell you, let's just manifest right now that I'm going to be able to have several of the other ladies here on the show because it was just amazing. And I'm so bummed out. The Dream Lab is having the conference again this year. I'm bummed out I can't make it. My cousin's getting married and it's that day. So I will be going to the wedding. But I'm going to be on that IG story just trying to see what's going on. And I'm so proud of anyone who's going. And I don't know if there's still tickets available, but I will put the link in the show notes if anybody's interested. Please go and check it out if you're in New York City. New York City, right? It is in New York City.
Yes, it's in New
Yes,
York. Yep.
New York City. Okay. So we're gonna do a formal introduction. If my guest could please introduce herself, and then we're gonna dive into how this story is so full circle for me and how significant my guest probably doesn't even know how she impacted me that day. And she's about to find out today. Will my guest please introduce herself?
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Y'all, my name is Karina F. Daves. I am a life coach and the podcast host of One Day at a Time, and I love helping women get their lives back. I love working with moms, young people, people that have been married for decades. I love just working with women, and I really do feel that God has created me and put me on this earth to guide and help people, specifically women.
Mm, amen to that. Yes. Okay. So a little bit of more background to this, not backup, background. I said backup because I could hear sirens, and this is the Bronx mindset in me that things is everything is a backup when there's sirens outside. It's terrible, I know, but it is. What can I tell you? So about a year ago, I started realizing that at that workplace environment, things were not healthy. And you would ask yourself, well, Deezy, that was only a couple of months after you started. Why would you stay? Well, because in that moment, I really wanted to try. I really, really wanted to try. I wanted to make sure that I gave it my all and I tried as much as possible until I just couldn't anymore, right? I go to the Dream Lab conference, the Mastery conference, I believe it was called. And, there's amazing leaders. Just to mention a couple others besides Karina, Kata Godman was there. Erica Cruz is there. Erica also has a podcast, Totally Manifesting, right now that I'm going to have her on the show too. But when Karina came on, Karina hits us with probably one of the most deepest prayers I had in that moment. And she helped us go into the little goodie bag and see this mirror. And that mirror was supposed to be a reminder to ourselves. And from the moment I got that mirror and after you gave us that prayer for all of us, um, I cried. It was probably one of the deepest prayers I needed in that moment as someone who was trying since well over a year ago come back to her faith and just believing in the highest power. And it just touched my soul so much. And I realized that every single day that I went into this job and I kept looking at myself in the mirror, I was not myself. And now that I'm in this new job, that mirror is still with me. That mirror is right in front of my desk. And I am able to so naturally look at myself in the mirror and say, yeah, this is you. This is what you were meant for. And I'm able to continue giving myself that pep talk. I'm able to still look at myself in the eyes and say, you are meant for this. You are going to be okay. You are strong. You are badass. Like, there was so much impact to what that moment was for me. Between you praying for us, you had, first of all, she did a little dance before that too. I just want to give a shout out to Karina that because it is hard to get down in heels and doing all this stuff and outfits and all that. And Karina gave us a whole little dance too, and I loved it. But in that moment with that prayer, I just don't know if you knew just how much I personally needed it. And I'm sure others in that crowd needed it too, and excuse me, and it meant everything for me. So
Amen.
first and foremost, I want to thank you for that, because I've kept that mirror and that prayer with me for almost an entire year, and it's going to stay with me. And it just made such a huge positive, motivating impact in my life, and I have to give you thanks for
Wow.
that.
Wow, Daisy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that like God really puts stuff on our hearts. And, to be honest with you, half the time I don't know who I'm praying for. I just know that the Holy Spirit wants me to pray for something
Mm-hmm.
and that it will help and honor people in the room. And it's just so like beautiful to see that come full circle. So thank you for that. That's crazy. And that mirror said, put yourself first. And I remember telling people, like, I know that most of us are moms and have children, and we have been raised to put ourselves last. But what I want to remind you of is that if you don't put yourself first, then everybody gets the last of you, anyways. And
Mm-hmm.
so you need to put yourself first so everybody can get the first of you. And I know it sounds corny and I know it sounds crazy, but it's true because if I don't put myself first, then my kid gets the like 50% of me. They don't get the 100% filled up person that did everything necessary. I'll give you a really small example. So right now,
Yeah.
um my back hurts. Like I've had this like back issue for about like 3 weeks now and I hate it because I never have um like aches or anything, and it started a couple weeks ago, and I'm the type of person that when something hurts, like I call everybody. So I went, I got a massage, then I went and I saw a physical therapist, and then I was like, "Oh, it's still hurting." And then this week I booked a chiropractor appointment. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to go and get some images. But right now, I'm doing all those things because one of the things that my 2-year-old still, and he's 2, he still likes to be picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, but I can't really pick him up that much. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying all of these things to put myself first so that I can pick him up. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but it's true. Like, and I look at him and I'm like, my back hurts right now. I can't pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm
Right.
serious. I can't pick you up right now. But I need to take care of myself first so that I can come back to my family first. So go and obviously like not be in pain and all those other things. But I do think about them. And I think that sometimes as women, especially moms, we think that by putting ourselves first, it means that our kids and our partners and everybody else comes last, but that's not true.
Mm, mm. It's so funny because I had known for quite some time too that if I'm not okay, my kid's not gonna be okay. But it was reassuring when you spoke on that. It's reassuring when you kept emphasizing the need for us to think of ourselves, to put ourselves beforehand. It was, I believe, what helped me start opening up my eyes to a lot of things. And I was on this journey of learning how to set boundaries on multiple levels, right? On learning how to be a lot more protective of my space. I I was working, and this is where it's a full circle moment because on that day, Naomi met you for the first time. I think face to face. Naomi it is. And Naomi and I go way back. We're friends for quite some time. And I was starting to work with her from a food and health coach perspective. And what was crazy was that was an attempt for me to put myself first. But because of everything else that I was not putting myself first, including the workplace environment, I was not taking care of me in my health or my wellness. It got to the point where depression was a huge question. It came up again. It got to the point where I was having physical symptoms where a doctor sitting me down, she's like, we may need to discuss PCOS. I need to do some tests on you. And I'm like, what? Like, just looking at all these other factors. And I didn't even realize that. And so, in really having a commitment to put me first in all boxes, and really sitting there having to evaluate this and look at myself in that mirror and be like, no, you playing yourself, Daisy. This is what are you doing? Like you're trying to mask this box here with these. You're trying to tell yourself, oh, this is checked off, so I could sacrifice this one. No, it matters. It makes such a huge difference when you can actually sit there and say, no, everything here, all these boxes right here, I'm checking off. Yes, is me first. Yes, is me first. Yes, is me first. Yes. Because once all of that is me first, that kid that's looking at me and is seeing everything that I'm doing, and it's not like he's 15 now, guys. He called me out on my stuff. He said, I think it's time for you to change your job. You're not the same person. That's a problem, you know? And so I
Wow.
get it when you say, it's not being able to carry your child. That hurts. It does. It's not being able to be there for your kid, right? Because it's not just carrying him, it's he needs me in that moment, right? And I'm not able to be there in the moment in the way he needs me, right? And it's that feeling. So I get it 100%. And again, this has been one of the most yeah, toughest, but probably one of the most amazing years of my life. And the way this past month has gone for me, and I'm diving into this deeper in the Solita episode. So I hope y'all tune into that one. It's the one right before to this episode. The way this year has been for me, probably one of the toughest years of my life, even worse, even tougher than a divorce year, custody battle year, even worse than that, even more intense than that, but probably the most rewarding and the one where I learned the most lessons. And I still wouldn't change a thing, to be honest with you. I wouldn't.
Wow.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't
Wow.
at all. So I want to dive into the raw mess of the week. And that is where we tend to highlight, something that's going on in the world, whether I've seen it on social media, on the news, something a little bit relevant or related to some form of the topic we're going to discuss today. But also the fact, and I love that you mentioned this when you open this up, you said you don't know who you're praying for, but you feel that God has sent you here with a purpose, and shout out to God for that. Because it came through a year ago. But no, you have no idea how much I needed that prayer that day. Like it was insane to me. It was everything that I needed, I swear. But there's something going on in the world right now. And I know, listen, we don't talk, I try my best to not talk politics here because while I know and I'm accepting of everyone having their own opinions politically, I don't think everyone knows how to engage in conversation with that. And so I know how to engage in conversation with that, but not a lot of people do. However, I do want to shine some light on something, and I'm gonna call it the raw mess of the week because it's the raw truth of what still continues to happen in this world. And it's messy in the sense that I was actually I don't know if the right word is surprised, definitely disturbed, because I feel that despite what your political stance is, I think first and foremost, we are all human and we can all just be a bit empathetic to certain situations that any human being might go through, right? I don't know what it is to be an immigrant going to a different country. I know my parents know that. I know my parents know what it is to come to this country and not know anyone or not know anything and just go straight into working, right? Governor Abbott in Texas has sent immigrants by bus with lies of where they're going to go. And they dropped off these immigrants who essentially were seeking asylum. And they dropped them off right in front of the vice president's home with no guides. Yes, I followed this story a little bit this weekend. No guides, no assistance. These people have just been dropped off and they're by themselves. They have no one. They're seeking asylum. Let's just put that all the way out there. Clearly they've been given this right to enter. And some have arrived to Texas, some have arrived to Florida, I believe. Florida, or I think Florida's trying not to allow any of them in, right? But in Texas, Governor Abbott has decided, well, we're just going to send you off. Someone's going to be waiting there for you, blah, blah, blah. And that's not the case. And we have news coverage all over and so on. Shout out to AOC for calling a lot of these politicians out, because one of the things I do believe wholeheartedly, and I've heard her say, is this is beyond politics, right? It's just about humans. And so for me, regardless of where I stand politically, I just don't know if I could ever have the heart to do that to someone. I just don't understand how someone can have that type of reasoning, um, in that strategizing or decision making from just a business standpoint, to think that it's okay to just leave people who have never been in this country just in the street. And so I just wanted to highlight that a little bit. I'm passionate about just the topic of immigration alone, but I just wanted you to take a little bit of if you've heard of it and what do you think about it. Not so much from the political standpoint, but more so from the human standpoint. What are your thoughts on that?
So I don't have cable, and that doesn't mean that I am not, you know, conscious of the things that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
But my main source is usually NPR.
Mm.
That's what I listen to, or that's what gives me the less stress.
Yes.
I do feel like that is the news coverage that I've relied on for so many years, ever since graduate school, because of the ways that they just really deliver their stories.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really listen to Fox or, CNN is okay. But
Mm-hmm.
the ways that they deliver news is a little bit too fast and
Mm-hmm.
too much, like too much for me. So I tend to rely on NPR. So no, I have not heard about this story.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, it is heartless what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that has to do with immigration and in the way of people coming to this country really does pierce my heart, because I migrated to this country in the 90s. And
Mm-hmm.
you know um it's just like the way that we're treated is so different, I mean, in good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday my son attempted to steal a Pokemon card from the mall, and he's 7. And the conversation that we had with him was so different from, I think, a conversation that most parents would have to have with their child. First we had this conversation with him that it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had another conversation with him about how people like us, you have to be even more careful when you do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that migrating to this country is anything bad, but we are significantly, history has proven that we are treated differently. I mean, when you think about the war on drugs in the 80s, with a
Mm,
large percentage of Black men being incarcerated for the small amount of drugs on them versus everybody else and the time that they received. And then you fast forward 20 years after that, and the people that start having drugs on them look differently and now
mm-hmm,
have connections and now have parents who are senators and now have parents who are judges. And now we have moved away from imprisoning, from im- putting people in prison with drugs, to now rehabilitation,
mm,
because the demographic of people that are being caught more with drugs, you know, don't look like us
mm-hmm.
and have more privilege than us. And that's just one small example. I mean, we can get into a very deep example about women and women of color in the workplace. I mean, we are just historically treated differently when it comes to promotions, when it comes to anything. So, yes, it is very heartless. And for me, I think that, my heart really does go out to a lot of these families. I don't think that it's the right thing to do. And as cheesy as it sounds, it's not the only thing I can do, which is pray, but I do believe in, having, what's the word I want to use? Like having a buy in a lot of these areas by, if you see something, say something. If you see
Mm-hmm.
something and an opportunity where you can support, or you can donate, or you can be there, or you can sign a letter or write a letter, take the opportunity to, take advantage of the small privilege that we do have in being able to advocate and do that.
Do take pride in saying is that I am making my contributions within my career space to what this looks like, because the truth is a lot of these families are coming over here to New York City. And so if there's any way I can give back, I'm doing so, but I too am looking for other ways, that additional ways, I should say, to give back one way or another. It's funny you mentioned, and I'm so sorry that happened, but I say it's funny because shout out to my little brother Tito. We used to go shopping at Pathmark and for groceries, and Tito had this thing with always trying to sneak out the wrestling magazines, and because he wanted them. And my dad used to say, I'm not paying this amount for paper. Like, I'll pay you the pay-per-view show, but I'm not paying for paper. Like, at least the pay-per-view show, we can all understand it. I can watch it. I know it's in English, but I know what's happening. I can't sit here and read this in English. Like, my dad used to just flip out so much over magazine. And Tito would like have these fits until like one day my parents told like a Pathmark person, like, my kid is trying to take this magazine out. I need you to stop him at the door. And they did that to him for him to like, get shocked, get scared. They did like a whole scene on him. And my parents did this to him. Poor Tito. But Tito has probably been traumatized in so many levels.
But also, like, shout out to Tito for trying to advocate for his literacy, because if I were Tito, I would have explained to my dad that the magazine is evergreen
Yeah.
and that it would enhance my vocabulary and
Mm-hmm.
literacy skills, and that this was something for me and not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Shout
what
out to
I would have
Tito.
shared. Shout out to Tito, because pay-per-view is great, but like we're just all watching it and then we lose it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
this evergreen form of literacy, like,
Right.
is here forever and will enhance who I
Yeah.
am. So shout out
Yeah.
to Tito.
I'm gonna send that part. This part right here, I'm looking at the
Yes.
Minimart. I'm gonna send it to
Yes.
my little brother so he can go downstairs and then have a conversation with my parents, because he likes to do this. Whenever something comes up, he'll go downstairs. He'll be like, "You remember that time that you did this to me? And do you remember this? Look at me now." He'll say things like that. So he doesn't let things go.
Yes.
He's a Leo.
Shout out to
He,
Tito for
yeah, he's
advocating for his
yes,
literacy
yes,
rights.
absolutely.
Mhm.
But I remember that, and so I think there's always, again, just valuable lessons in those moments, right? But yes, to all of you, especially if you're living in a state where you may have found out that this is happening in, and you do happen to know where these families are essentially being taken to, then to find their formal home, right? Where they can get the care that they need, and be stationed, let's say. Please find ways to help out, from a human standpoint. I want to specify on that. This is not. I know it all revolves around politics, but the way we can look at it too doesn't just have to be political. And there's plenty to do here in New York City. So anyone who's interested, please reach out to me. I'll definitely be able to gather some information. All right, so there goes our romance of the week. I want to go into our segment of As Raw as It Gets. And here I want to highlight finding yourself again, because as time goes by and we continue to grow and we're constantly evolving and whatnot, it's like we're constantly finding ourselves again, like the new person, the newer version of ourselves, right? I don't like to say the better version of ourselves, because sometimes I feel like that takes away from all the good. But the newer version of ourselves, right? um your story in particular, Karina, you've had downs, you've had ups. You share a lot with us, and I thank you so much for that. You also share a lot of advice, and you're so raw with it. Just your lessons with your marriage too, and for me, that is so important, because while I am a divorced woman, and while I go back and forth, sometimes I'm like, I'm never getting married again. Sometimes I'm like, no, if it's the right one, I'm definitely getting married again. Like, I go back and forth. But one thing I do know for sure is that when I meet that partner of mine, I want to continue surrounding myself, and I've been doing it since, with those lessons from couples, to be able to keep that love around, and remember what it's like to form part of something in someone's life too. Because I don't want it to be a shocker for me. I don't want to find myself going through a second divorce. And I want to be fully aware of me and my actions and my behaviors, and so on. So I appreciate that from you as well, because you one thing about Karina, y'all, she keeps it all the way raw. I just want to say that. I appreciate that so much, because some of y'all won't do that. And Karina does. And some of y'all should go follow her so y'all can see how she does it. Yeah, and then some of y'all should take notes. I'm just saying. But tell me a little bit of what that looks like for you when it comes to your faith, your journey, those ups and downs. How has that looked like for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know what's so interesting is that when I started out, um, really just putting myself out there and I started my business and I started life coaching, my main thing was working with women.
Mm-hmm.
And, I it was maybe like a couple months in that I was like, you know what? I need to start talking about my relationship. And one thing that I just do want to highlight is that we were probably 8 years married at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
God had instructed me to keep our relationship very private. And so
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago was actually the first time that people had really had an insight to my marriage, to its ups and downs, to the realness of it. And I want to share with you guys that, like, if that is what you feel in your heart, or that is what God is calling you to do, to keep your relationship private. And this does not mean, if your relationship is abusive or toxic,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a healthy relationship, and it's very private details that, the world really doesn't need to know about until you feel ready to share. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, I got married. Will be 10 years next month. Woo. This
Oh,
is Yeah, this
congratulations.
is the longest relationship I've ever been in. This
That's
is the hardest
beautiful.
relation this is
Let's
the
see, my chest is
hardest
hurting.
relation this is the hardest relationship I've ever been in, but also the most fruitful. I've learned so much. I've changed so much. My husband tells me that he's been married to like 25 different Karinas, um, and good and bad. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, we were really young, 24, 25 when we got
Mm-hmm.
married. And, when people ask us, like, how did you know? Um, I just I just knew, like, I felt like I prayed for my husband, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt like God really sent him, and I didn't know how it was going to play out, but I knew that I was supposed to marry him. And so I did. We did, and we were broke. when we got married. We had
Mhm.
no money.
Mhm.
Um, I was just starting my career. My husband, at the time was, I think, like on his third or fourth year working for Nissan. And we were living in this 700-foot square apartment in Jersey, in North Jersey. And we were young, and I came from having divorced parents, and my husband, his parents are still very much married.
Mhm.
But he talks a lot about how, it's just difficult to have watched him. It's may not have been the most healthiest marriage. And I think that
Mhm.
I just want to stop there and say that there's a reel that I made about um quality versus quantity. And I think that a lot of people will want to tell you that they have a lot of money, a lot of time put into their marriage, and a lot of children. And I just want to remind you to not feel offended or judged by that, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. Just because you've been married for 25 years doesn't mean that like you have the best marriage, or just because you have 5 kids and I have two doesn't mean that like you know more about being a mom than I do. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Mhm.
so we got married, we were young, we were building our careers, and, we just came from 2 different backgrounds, and we didn't know what it was to be married, and I think we still don't know. And and we've just made it our own, and, we had to find a church where we both went together because we were going through separate churches at the time. And the first step for us was really allowing God to be the third knot in our marriage, and allowing the Holy Spirit to lead us, which is the hardest thing to do because God is so pure and He's so good and He's so loving. And,
Mm.
we're human and we're not always so loving and so pure and so good. Like we're angry, we're anxious, we're mad, we're high level, like we're just different. And, you know, um, it got to the point in our marriage, I think this was like year 3, where we had our first child, and we knew that it was like one of those crossroads. And it's something that I guess like only your listeners will know, but my husband and I have actually had 2 crossroads in our marriage, that I haven't spoken about. I haven't spoken about actually the second one, but the first one was is that moment in your relationship where you're trying to figure out if you should stay together or not.
Mm.
And it was difficult. I remember, it's like those silent mornings where you don't say good
Mm.
morning.
I've had
And,
those.
you're not necessarily disrespectful, but you don't say good morning. You just, hey, the Texas stop, like that you don't text that day. You don't call each other on the way home. And we were going through this period in year 3. And I finally said, I'm a social worker. I have my master's in social work. And I said, listen, the one thing that I do know besides God that has also worked is therapy, and I think we should go. And our baby was like 5 months at the time.
Mm.
And we asked the therapist if we could bring him, and he said sure. And my husband's only condition was that the therapist be a Black man. And I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be like the hardest thing to find. But we found Dr. Carr in Union, New Jersey, who's amazing, who now does virtual. Um, Dr. Carr, Carr, he's great, and he will call you out on your crap. And we
Love
got to
it.
therapy, and after a couple of sessions, we were told by Dr. Carr that like none of our issues had anything to do with each other, but more so to do with our own unhealed trauma. And we
Mm.
started individual therapy at that point, and we aggressively really went into therapy, individually, marriage wise. We also dove deep, more into our relationship with God independently and together. We man, fast forward to like out 3 years after that, we really wanted to buy a house. And so we decided to, people fast from different things. Like they'll fast from like foods or places that they'll visit.
Mhm.
Every single faith has a different way that they fast. And for us, we decided to fast until we bought our house, which, I mean, we did lose a lot of weight because I think we fasted from like sugar, Netflix, like certain things that we just felt were impeding on our mental clarity.
Okay.
And I think we fasted for about like 6, 7 months, until we have the house that we have today. And when we moved here, what you have to understand is that like a lot of couples, when they're going through things good or bad and they move geographically, there's this sense that it's like a new beginning and everything will be fine and everything is fixed. But that's
Mm.
like necessarily not always true,
Mhm.
because if you haven't really dealt with like the deep, deep things, then like it's really not real. You get what I'm saying,
Oh,
Daisy?
I
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Oh, I just want you to know she's preaching to me again.
Oh, and so we moved an hour and a half away from our family, and to this town, about 10 minutes from Princeton, if you guys are familiar with Princeton, New Jersey,
Mhm.
and this big house. And when we first bought this house, I asked God if this was the house for us, and He said that it would be a place of refuge. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I
Mhm.
decided to call. At the time, there were a lot of kids left at the border. And so I was calling the border to figure out if any of those kids had made it to New Jersey, because one of their stipulations is that you have to have an additional room for them.
Okay.
And I didn't in our small apartment, but I did now. And so at the time, they were leaving the kids in Camden, which was too far from where we were. So I was like, okay, fine. And we were commuting, everything was going great. My husband's commute was very long, and work really gets to your personality. And so for the first 6 months, I said to my husband, "You are the grumpiest person I've ever met. You're either going to change your job or like we're not going to make it."
Mhm.
Change your job, change your attitude, or we're like not going to make it, because it's your livelihood, it's our livelihood, and it's just like not going well. And so then he decided to work about maybe 20 minutes from us, which
Okay.
changed him drastically. And then COVID hit. And, when COVID hit, I had just given birth maybe 3, 4 months before that. And
Mhm.
I remember at the beginning of COVID, my husband and I looked at each other and said, "This is going to be one of those things that either break us apart or bring us together." And I said,
Mhm.
"Yeah, we're either the divorce rate is gonna go skyrocket, or people are gonna stick it together." Like, COVID made a lot of relationships. Here's what I will say: COVID lifted the veil for a
Mhm.
lot of relationships that were masked and that we didn't really know who we were with. Like, I really felt like COVID really exposed us. You see, like, I remember hearing a quote about like, people, you don't really know who people are until X and YZ happen. And somebody says, no, it's actually that you just are exposed to who they really are. And so
Mhm.
COVID really exposed who my husband and I really were. And a couple months before COVID, I was starting my blog at the time, which I didn't know would turn into a life coaching business.
Mhm.
And my husband has always had this thing where he's felt very insecure, which is he's worked through it. He's worked through it with therapy, very insecure about his education versus my education.
Mhm.
And we always joke and say, like, I'm book smart and he's street smart. And
Mhm.
so that type of insecurity began to become unveiled as I started my podcast, as I started my blog. And here's the funny part: like, my husband purchased my first mic for my podcast. My husband, said, like, "I'm so happy for you," and all of these things. But when people are still people.
Yeah.
And there were moments where my husband was like, I feel kind of like crazy that like your things are working out, and like his hobby is racing, and like my things aren't working out, like your things just take so much longer. And I remember like being in therapy and our therapist asking us like, why do you feel like you need to be in competition with Karina?
Mhm.
Why aren't you guys a team? Like, why are you guys opponents? Why is she like in lane 1 and you're in lane 2? Like, why is that? And at that point, he decided again to go back into individual therapy, because there was a lot of insecurities that like I couldn't fix. And I've spoken also about this on my reels, that like I can't fix everything for my husband. And it was realizing that I really needed to surrender that to God, to his therapist, because I couldn't figure that part out. But I knew that if he didn't figure that part out, like we were going to have some we were going to start to have some deep issues. And I think that jealousy is one thing that we don't talk about in our marriages, in our
Mhm.
relationships, but it actually really does happen. And I think that for me, I have been possibly jealous of him for not just like his engineering of things, and like his perception of me is that things always work out. And my perception of him is that he gets so much more freedom than I do.
Oh,
Right. Yeah. I mean, we can go for hours
oh
about this.
yes. Oh
And,
yes.
and what I started to realize was that like I was putting a lot of that pressure on myself because in therapy and in conversations with my husband, he was like, but I never say no. Like, and we have this rule in our house where, not rule, but we have this thing in our house where it's kind of like, I'm not asking for help. We're doing this together. So like even with our kids, like I feel like when I ask for help, I'm going into this victim mentality where I'm telling everybody that like this is my responsibility and I would like everybody to help me. And so
Mm,
we had to even change through COVID, we had to change that about our household because it really did become where like Karina was asking for help and everybody was like, "Wait, wait, like we're a family, like we're supposed to do this together. Why do you feel so alone?" Like, and I'm like, "Oh, like that's not right,
yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
Um, and I would have been really pissed off if my husband was like, I mean, I've seen so many videos of husbands being like, "If my wife don't cook, if my wife don't clean," and I'm like, "No, baby, this is an equal opportunity household, and and we're gonna do it together."
I love
So,
it.
so that was, I would say, that was very hard during COVID, where we had that period of our marriage and it was difficult. And mind you, I was building a business. I was still working my full-time job and we were both raising a newborn. And we made it out. And I'll say that then we reached another period, which was about a year ago, where my husband's career made him very unhappy.
Mm.
And, he was in the car industry and I said to him, I'm the type of person that I'm like, I have mentioned before, like 10 years ago, that you should probably transition out and I'll support you. And my husband's theory was always, guys, they always think about like money. My
Yeah.
husband's like, the money. And I'm like, the money's good. And my husband's thing was, I was like, like keep searching. Like have your chess pieces ready to move, right? I said to him, because God is doing something, I'm telling you. I was working in higher ed at the moment and I was on the public loan forgiveness plan where after 10 years of service, you get your loans forgiven. And so I was getting gearing up to year 10 and I didn't hate my job, I hated my boss. And I think those are
Mm.
two different things. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate what I did. I hated the people that managed me. I really didn't believe it. There's a lot of toxicity, a lot of racism, a lot of inequality. It was horrible. And those things were getting to me as well. And so I said to my husband, God is doing something. I feel it. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And I was like, just get him ready. And my husband, has his gun permit and he would go to the gun shop by our house and talk to guys and blah, blah, blah. And they would be like, yeah, like we work for Princeton University and all this other stuff. So, anyways, through prayer and through that moment, that was difficult too because then I ended up getting my the job that I have now. I transitioned to tech and in January and I kind of side-eyed my husband. Like the first thing I did was like I got the job, your move. And my
Oh.
husband was like I was like, "Are you ready? I told you to be ready." And my husband was like, okay." And he didn't transition till 4 months later. And those 4 months, I think, you know, they really affected us because, we were transitioning time-wise in our marriage, right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was commuting now, I was traveling now, and we were also transitioning into this period where God really put it on my heart to not judge my husband, to not remind him that he already knew what he needed to do and I needed to just wait. And I think that's like the most difficult thing to do as a wife and as a woman is to just wait. Like I hate waiting. And so I would have these conversations with God. Like I remember waking up some mornings and like looking to my left and being like, I'm serious. Like I'm being so honest with you. Like I remember looking at my husband and be like, like, because I would get up at 4:30 in the morning and I would be like, "Ugh," and I would be like, when is he gonna do it? Like, when is he gonna do it? And God would tell me those mornings. Like, so I read and pray in the morning before I do my most of my activity. And
Mm-hmm.
so like God would settle my heart in the mornings, like stop judging him. Because I would judge
Oh.
him. I would judge him for how long it took him. Like I would judge him. And these are insecurities that he has shared with me. Like, Karina, I'm so jealous of you being so fast, right? And here I am judging him for, in my eyes, being so slow, right? And God really put it
Wow.
on my heart, like, you can't judge him. Like, I'm working on him just the way I worked on you for 10 years and kept you in that place. And people probably looked at you like, why are you still working at that place?
Mm.
But you knew that there was a goal. Your husband knows also, he's smart enough to know when to make the move. And he's not going to make the move in January just because you got the job in January. There's things that need to happen here. And I didn't know what God meant. But for those 4 months, God wanted us to get used to our routine because our routine, Daisy, had drastically changed. Our routine was very different. I was leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't seeing my kids till I got home. Terrence was doing all of the drop offs, all of the pickups, all of the dinners, all of the breakfast, all of the lunches. He was doing everything. And I didn't really know or understand the weight of doing all of those things and going to his job and trying to find another job to go to, because guess what? I had done those things with a blink of an eye. And so for me, my belief was like, well, I can, why can't he? And it's because we're all wired differently. And if I truly fell in love with this man for who he was, and he's not just like sitting on the couch, not doing anything, but he's doing his duty as my husband, then why am I judging him? And
Mm.
it was very like, I mean, this was recent. This was like what, like 8, 9 months ago? Like, this, it was very heavy, the judgment that I had for him. And so then in April, God granted him the position at Princeton University, and he's there, and his schedule's amazing, 7 to 3, so he still does drop-offs and pickups and dinners, but he's not as stressed, like
Right.
mentally and stuff like that. And that, I think, was another crossroads because um, because of the judgment that existed from my part. And it was difficult to talk about. But it was true, it was honest. Like, I'm not perfect and I never claimed to be. I make a lot of mistakes. And my relationship really didn't start out to be the highlight of why I was putting myself out there or why I was helping women. But I realized that God really orchestrated this relationship to help and
Mm.
shepherd a lot of other people and where they are in their journey.
Mm. And that is exactly what I wanted to hear. I mean, not all of that, like, I mean, because I didn't know, guys. Let me clarify. I didn't know that, but I wanted to hear the rawness behind where your faith comes in. And that is essentially how I've viewed it, how I've seen it through what you've shared. Um, I realized that that level of impact of what you've been able to learn just through your relationship about yourself, about your partner, about your home, about your space, your children, what works for you, right? Everything that you've tried for, right? I've been able to see that just a little bit of it. And I knew deep down is that her faith really is what helps her through it all. Her faith is what guides her. It's really there. That's what it is. And that's what I wanted to bring to the show today because again, my listeners know I there was something many years ago that happened and I've never quite fully detailed it. I don't know if ever the person's family will ever come on the show because I want to always respect people's privacy, but it was a question, it was the one and only moment I truly honestly questioned God, why would you let this happen? And since then my faith just kept losing. Like I just kept losing it. And so to be on a journey from a year ago, roughly a little over a year ago, knowing that I wanted to come back to my faith, knowing that I wanted to search so deep, right? And being able to see things fall into place the moment I said, God, I leave it in your hands. I leave it in your hands. I know I'm getting back to that faith. I know I'm leading with that. I know I'm praying, and this time I'm praying intentionally. And this time I'm praying not just for me. This time I'm praying if anybody else is feeling this way, please help us see, help me, right? And it's been rewarding And I think that's where I too am able to say, and I say it with pride, like I said it from the beginning, the toughest year of my life, but I wouldn't change it for a thing. I wouldn't, because of everything that I've learned from it. And I'm not talking relationships, I'm not talking marriage. See, Karina's able to shine light on that piece of her life. And I'm able to shine light on something else, right? But this is why I always say relationships is not just with marriage. There's so much involved in that. There's our children, there's other family members, there's friends, there's relationships with complete strangers at work, right? There's your relationship with your job. There's a relationship with your kitchen, a relationship with your shower time. Like there's a relationship with every single moment, right? I know my purpose in going to take a shower is to shower. I get that. But what am I doing while I'm showering? Some people are sitting under that shower to just think. Some people are listening to music. Some people are listening to a podcast. Some people are listening to a prayer. Some people are finding out certain information at the moment. Some people just need to listen to water. There's, to me, in my world, in my eyes, and in my mentality, there's a relationship between you and everything and everyone else on a daily basis at any given moment. And I think intention plays a big role in that, but it's also what is helping you lead into that, what is helping you guide into that. And I've learned that in this past year. I have. And so, Karina, thank you for shining light on that, because that's exactly where I wanted to be able to share with the listeners how faith has gotten you through plenty of these ups and downs. And of course, shining light on, like you said from the beginning, right? Our marriages, we're told, oh, it's privado, it's private,
Mhm.
and it is,
Mhm.
it is. But there's so much we could learn from that.
Mhm.
I joke with my cousin, who's also my comadre. Shout out to Diane. She's married. Shout out to my compadre too. And we talk about, right, how she moves with her marriage, right? En confianza, right? It's between conversations between comadres, between cousins. Half the world doesn't need to know what my cousin shares with me. And the best that I can give her advice on, having been married once, having been divorced, what I've learned through that. See, I believe even in marriages, you're co-parenting. The only difference is some are married, some are not, right? But they're still co-parenting in a marriage, right? I co-parent, and one day I remember we laughed and we said, did our parents go through this? Because they never showed us. Like they always used to just act like it was just so private. And we joked and we said, we're deceived by our parents. Our parents were supposed to like let us understand certain things. Or is it that they really just had like this perfect marriage because we didn't see certain things? We didn't hear certain things. And we joke a lot about that. And the truth is, it's not that they were not going through it. I just think that from what times were before and to what times are today, I think a lot of things were just not ever spoken of. I think a lot of things for us growing up, even in childhood, it's like, usted no se meta, you don't get involved, you mind your business. That's not, and I still mind my business. My parents' arguments till this day, I'm not involved with that. I don't want to be at war with nobody. I don't want to be in the middle. No, but I think there is an opportunity where we're able to be private and still transparent and respect, but with a dose of respect to our own relationships, especially in marriage, right? I think it's okay to talk about certain things and share that with other people while not necessarily allowing people to step into your relationships and your marriages specifically, or even your relationships with your children. So again, Karina, thank you for shining light on that with your faith and in your relationship with your husband, and just how it has all tied into so many moments of your life. Um, I want to lead into the double or nothing, and this is where I want to shine light on womanhood, and because you are here leading and guiding women. And one of the things that I realized with you through the reels, through your podcast, and just hearing you over a year ago, no, almost a year ago, I should say, um, praying for a group, a whole floor of women. Your take and your outlook on being the voice for women, for wives, for mothers. How do you decide it's okay to share these gems? It's okay to share my offerings with all these women, for all these women, for your hermanas is what you called us. I remember that. You called us hermanas, and that stayed with me too. Um, and you still are able to sustain your own balance for you. How are you able to do that?
So when I started my business, and I one thing that I didn't share was that when I came on social media, it was actually after a 2-year fast from social media. So I
Mm,
wasn't on social media for 2 years when I came back on. And it was very difficult for me. And I remember, so I had worked with 2 social media strategists actually, because I'm the type of woman that, like, I'm at the age where I ask for help. Um, and I recognize that if I don't know something, I need to take a class or I need to hire somebody. I'm not going to do this crap alone. I'm just
I
not.
love it.
That's who I that's who I decided to be. Once I guess this was like 2021 hit, I was like, or 20, the end
Hmm.
of 2020, I was just like, I'm not doing this stuff by myself. And so working with those 2 social media strategists, it's very curated. It's very bells and whistles. It's very like hashtag centric. It's very, how to get traffic to your page and to your website. Like, and I really learned, like, I have journals and notes. And I actually was going to show this in my stories, but
Jams
I, I
time.
have this notebook that says like content ideas. And I
Oh,
have like four or five of them, and they're just like ideas and ideas and ideas of content. And I was
yeah.
sitting here.
Karina's putting me to so much shame right now because I should do better with my life and all the notebooks that I have.
Don't worry. And so I forgot about those, but that was the life that I was living. And so when I launched my business, I was taking Janice's Yo Quiero Dinero's side hustle class. And then I also
Mm,
took Erica Cruz's TikTok class. And then I hired Kat Del Carmen as my business coach. And then I took 6 months later, I took Janice's what is it called? It's called like blog boot camp. So basically like how to monetize your blog. And it was amazing.
mm,
So like I am taking class after class after class. And when I launched my business, and to answer your question about deciding what to share with, I remember that it's very like algorithm centric, like how to break the algorithm, like how to get the most views, like what to do,
mhm,
right? And if you look back at my earlier content, it's I love music, and so it was very much a show. And I also worked for a film school, so that kind of made me a perfectionist at the time. I was praying one day about, a lot of this and feeling kind of like stuck and really not knowing what direction to go into. And mind you, at the time, not that it matters, but at the time, I think I had maybe like 300 followers, and I was praying to God about it. And God really put it heavy on my heart to not allow those numbers to define me. And I was like, yeah, but like that's how that God, you want me to shepherd these women? You want me to shepherd these people? How are they going to find me if I like don't do the social media strategy that people are telling me to do?
mhm.
And I heard him very clearly. The Holy Spirit said, do not follow the algorithm. And it was
Okay.
so deep. And I was like, what? And it's interesting because I'm going to create a workshop on this. Hopefully, praise God, if I get it, called "Do Not
Praise.
Follow the Algorithm" to help other women business owners achieve who they want to be on social media. And so I was like, "Do not follow the algorithm." And mind you, at the time, like I was having Drake music, I was having like all these songs that like I love on my reels. If you look like early on in my reels, there's a lot
Uh
of
huh.
music, and there's a lot of show. And he said, "Do not follow the algorithm." And I was like, "Well, if I don't follow the algorithm, then I'm doing this entire content on the whim. Like all these content journals are going to be put away and everything is just going to be on the whim." And
Mhm.
he said, "Yeah." And so, I guess about a year, maybe a year ago, every single Daisy, I'm not even lying to you. How I decide what I share is that every single piece of content is on the fly. My entire social media, my podcast, everything is on the fly. From even from the caption that you read, it's on the fly. It's all about what I feel like that day God has put on my heart to pray for and do and shepherd and give to people. There are mornings that I say, because I really don't like making content on weekends, but sometimes I feel like I should just do it because I have something on my
Mhm.
heart. But there are days where I wake up and it's just not a content day. It's the day that I it's not like I need a break, but like I just need some silence that day, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll think of something else, or sometimes my stories will just not be alive for like 2 days. Like it's okay. All of those things are okay.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how I pick and choose what I share, it's on the fly. My entire page. And if you go and look at my TikToks or my Instagram, you'll be like, "How is this on the fly? This has to be curated. This has to be outlined. This has to be planned."
That's exactly what I'm thinking right now.
And it's not. It's not. So you want to talk about like double dose of raw talk? This is it.
Mhm.
Like I'm telling you, my content is as raw as it gets because it's
Mhm.
on the fly. It every single message that you hear from me daily, God has put it on my heart to give you. And I can't tell you how many times DMs and comments I get like, "You're speaking to me. Do you live with me? How do you know me? This is crazy that this showed up on my page." And I'm like, I remember I had gotten out the gym and I was praying about employment. And I was like, man, if people only knew my story and my journey about my job and how long I prayed for a new job. And I was like, oh, share it. That reel, and it's not the highest amount of reel that I've ever gotten, but that reel alone about how I prayed for a job for 7 years, I think has over like 82,000 likes and over 900,000 views on Instagram alone. And I
Mm.
remember, one of my strategies, and it's not even I don't know if it's a social media strategy, but it's a strategy for me, is that if we're gonna be business owners and we're gonna be on social media, a part of that is engaging, right? Is engaging with
Mhm.
your community. And one thing that
Mhm.
you'll always see from me is I don't care how many comments they are, I go through almost every single comment. And 90% of the time, I comment back. If I don't comment back, I literally delete it because it was trash, you left on my
Mhm.
page, and I don't need it.
Mhm.
People are like, "What do you do with the haters?" I'm like, "I delete them." Like, it's simple, it's my
What
page.
else?
It's my
Right.
page. If you're
Right.
on there slandering me, right, I'm gonna delete you. And then
Right.
like,
Right.
it's very easy, it's not that hard, and I actually learned that from Janice. And
Mhm.
so anyways, and then the rest of it, I really do engage because I care and this is our work and this is what we do. And if I spoke to you, I want to let you know that I understand. And so anyways, I hope that answers your question.
It does. No, it absolutely does. You know what's so funny about that piece is I to delete comments I don't like, right? And I if at most I at least like the comment that you give me, I do respond as well. One of the things that I want to highlight on this is that, when we started this episode, and I do this with everyone, I'm like, did you see, the outline, right? And I always say it's just an overview. And the reason why, and I used to do this in the beginning, I used to list down questions on my agendas. I wouldn't share all the questions with the other person, not because anything was going to be of a surprise. Also, if any of my guests, if I know it's going to be a really, really complicated or probably a difficult topic, I do like to know from them, what will you not like to discuss. I like to respect that of people, because when we have social media platforms, we already share so much. And I know that's in our ability to control and decide what we're going to share, right? And for me, I do have my full blown career, and I do have my intentions and my goals with the space. And so, the same way I believe in professional partnership in my career, I believe that here too. This is beyond just networking for me. This is me respecting Karina's gems and offerings and craft and business, and knowing that if somewhere down the line I say one day, you know what, I want to work with Karina, I want her to be able to welcome me in her business too, and sustain that professional relationship with her and sustain that respect with her. But I do, and I do, and I told Karina this in the beginning. I said, I just like everything to flow so naturally. So I like to just give like the surface of what the agenda and the outlook is going to look like as far as the topic at hand. But I don't like to have it so scripted either. So I'll jot down like 3 questions for myself and I'll share that with the guests. But from those 3 questions, I decide, okay, I'm going to probably just start the conversation with this question. I see how the conversation is flowing, right? Because this platform is raw talk, because this platform is keeping it raw, I want this conversation of two people, whether I've seen them once in a lifetime, whether I've never met them before, whether I only know you virtually. I want my listeners to know just how fundamental a conversation could be and how much you could learn from two people who have never had a full length conversation a day in their life when they truly are their true, authentic, genuine selves and they give you their raw truth. And that's exactly what I have made it a purpose to create here with my platform. I don't think many people have an opportunity for that. And I don't think a lot of people know how to do that. And so when you do have people who take the opportunity and know how to do it, we need to seize the moment. Even if it isn't a podcast episode, we need to seize that moment. So thank you for being all the way up because I did think I was like, she hits it like right in the nose every reel. And I'm like, I wonder, and you know what's funny, right? Karina does it in like the best places, guys. Let me just shine light on this. And this is why I always link the IG page, right, of my guests. Karina could be waiting for it's your train, right? You wait for the
Hell
train.
yeah, it's my train. Hell
This is
yeah.
it.
Look
I
look at
love it.
the last reel, not or maybe the second to last reel. You actually see the train pulling up
Train.
behind me. It's I have many reels where the train's like beep and I'm like, "You understand?" And then
Yeah.
I'm like, "I gotta go." And then I'm running. I'm running for the train. Literally, I'm about to send Nike and New Balance and all of these
Yes.
sneakers that I wear a brand partnership collab email because they save my life every morning that I have to run up those stairs to catch my
Mm-hmm.
train. I'm
Mm-hmm.
waiting for my train or sweating
Yeah.
after the gym in my car. Yeah.
Yeah. I wait. It gives me life. It gives me life. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I had for remember I said I had a whole environment of a workplace that just was not healthy for me. And one of the things I noticed, and you guys are gonna think this is crazy, and I'm so happy you highlighted this because yeah, I swear this is not like a stalker thing. It's not. I swear, Karina, I swear, please. It's when you be intentional with who you follow, right? And
Mhm.
and what you notice about their surroundings and what makes them happy because that helps for me. That has helped me realize, I need to tap in. I need to
Mhm.
realize, I want to give her a shout out. I had her here as a guest, and I always say I'm manifesting working with her.
Mhm.
Julie Jameson,
Mhm.
redo your room. I
Mhm.
believe I said it right.
Mhm.
I have kept her in my mind and I follow her, and that still doesn't mean I'm never going to work with her. I've been said it, I'm going to work with her because and I know, and I manifest this, and I'm going to say it here today because you just said something that made such a difference. I'm going to be a homeowner. I'm going to get my home with the way I look at it,
Amen.
at the
Amen.
angles I look at it, and how I'm preparing for that with what you said earlier about the journey to getting your home, it feels so familiar. It just feels so familiar with so many things, right? And I know that's going to be the moment I'm going to be able to work with Julie when it's time to intentionally prepare my what's going to be my home with deep down inside decor, right? Um, but one of the things I noticed about you, and it brought me back to a space is the fact that you have acknowledged running for your train with your sneakers, right? And I realized, no, this is, I swear to God, guys, you're probably going to be like, Daisy, what the fuck? Could you believe that it was extremely rare in the most unhealthiest job ever that I had for a whole year that I never went to work with sneakers on?
Wow.
It was paining me and hurting me to get to work. And I realized I would never wear the sneakers. But when I was at the job before that for 6 years, I was like a boss in those sneakers. going to work, running to do this, running to do that. And it was 6 long years. And now that I started this new job, I'm back to going to work in sneakers. And you know what I realized? Wearing the sneakers is not just about the comfort. I realized for me in particular, I associate the wearing of the sneakers when I am in my best moment, and that is when I'm wearing my sneakers to go work out. I'm in my
Yes.
best moment in that mindset. I
Yes.
associate the gearing up.
Mhm.
It's what is when you think about grounding and you're
Mhm.
grounded in that
Mhm.
moment. So when
Mhm.
I get to the office, people was like, we hear your heels and you're coming. Yes, I wear my heels at work because for me that is my grounding moment in my heels in the workspace. But when I'm out that door and I'm changing the mindset, I
Mhm.
realize I go back into the sneakers. And for me, the sneakers
Mm.
have really given me that sense, that deep down sense. I'm still at work, but I'm working forward towards everything else. It's
Mm.
getting to work. It's gonna go cook. It's gonna go do my workout. It's gonna go journal. It's gonna go write. Yeah, it's all of that. All right. Because we shine so much light on this, the overdose, it's gonna be real short and sweet. I want to take this moment at an overdose to tell Karina that I thank her so much. Here's when we share something that we're overjoyed with or over it. But because this moment has been so truthful to me, I want to thank you
Thank you.
graciously for coming on this platform and sharing your word and your gems. And on an overdose, I'm going to encourage everyone to please go follow Karina. Please go see her offerings and her gems.
Amen.
Um, this has been a moment for me, and I am truly grateful for you for doing this for me and
I'm so
coming on this
grateful. No,
platform.
Daisy, I'm grateful for you allowing me to come into your space and do this. And
Mm-hmm.
this has been so good to have this talk early in the morning. I'm a morning. Daisy asked me what time. I said Sunday mornings is the only time I record with other people.
I was like,
So
all right, I'll hang
I've,
up on you.
I know I've shut down so many other recordings. I just can't. But
Yeah,
what I will say is I really do want to thank you. It's been such a pleasure just being with you and hearing all these stories. And this is just such a different podcast. I love it. I love it so
yeah.
much for how
Thank
it's
you.
framed. And listen, if you're at a point in your life where you feel lost, where you feel like you don't know where to turn and you really want your life back, then book a sales call with me. Go to the link in my bio. You can find me there at Karina F. Daves or on TikTok at Karina F. Daves or go to my website, Karina F. Daves. It's all Karina F. Daves, okay? It doesn't
Yes.
change. My podcast is One Day at a Time. You can listen to it on Apple iTunes. My last episode is called I'm Still, in capital letters, Married, where I share the gems on like how I'm still married and after a decade. So look out for that. And this has been so good to collab with Daisy. I've had such a great time. And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much,
And
Daisy.
everything will be on the show notes. And as always, guys, this has been another week and another episode on Double Dose of Our Talk podcast. I am your host, Misty, and you guys will tune in next week. Bye. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And we are live on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Make sure to tell a friend, to subscribe, rate, and review. Talk to you later. Bye.